Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Flexi webinar. My name is Bennett. I'll be the moderator for today. Our presenter is Aaron Clapp, Application Specialist at SAi. He knows everything there is to know about Flexi, and today he'll be showing us how to use Bitmap filters in Flexi to create some cool custom effects. After the presentation, we'll be able to answer any questions you have, either about Bitmap filters or any other Flexi topic, so feel free to put those questions in the chat, and we'll answer as many as we can. We are recording the webinar as always, so if you want to review anything Aaron discusses or share it with someone else, we'll be sending you all the link here this afternoon, so look out for that. And that's about it for me, so I'll go ahead and turn it over to Aaron.
All right, sounds good. So Flexi 12, Flexi 21, Flexi 19, it doesn't matter which version of Flexi that you have, they all have the ability to add in plugins in order to edit bitmaps, do all kinds of special effects like embossing and some different things like that. And whether you own an Adobe product or not, you can still get access to these effects and these plugins. So we kind of want to walk through, just a few of the plugins that I was able to download, and then kind of see how you can install these, what you need to kind of know how to install them, and some different things. So just to kind of be aware of the kind of step-by-step process. So first of all, in order to get a filter or to get access to a filter, you go to your bitmap menu and you're going to go down here to Adobe filters. Now you'll see that I already have some installed, but typically if you don't have any installed, it'll say none right here. We do have some filters here in Flexi that are fairly basic, doing kind of your basic kind of things like switching something to black and white, RGB or SymYK. You got some blur and some real basic level stuff to kind of do some of the basic things. But if you want to get more complex and more involved in what you want to do, you can add some filters right into Flexi. So this ranges from the big ones that are sold by, I think they're called Eye Candy and Alien Skin. Those are probably some of the bigger ones that you've probably heard of that you can pay for, all the way down to the simple free ones. Or very cheap ones you can buy for $10, $15 online, depending on on who's made them and whatnot. So you can get a whole range of products, and like I said, you don't have to have an Adobe product in order to get those filters to work. So for example, I can install the Alien Skin and Eye Candy in here with no install of Adobe Photoshop on my computer at all. So this is something that's kind of nice. You can kind of work outside of that. So how do we install these, or what do we do? Well, if you do have Adobe software, if you go to your preferences under your edit menu, you're going to see that the file path, and I've actually changed this. I'm going to copy this right now. So I'm going to restore the defaults here. So this is what it's going to look like for you. So when you first log into the screen, it's going to say, C Drive, Adobe, Photoshop plugins, because Flexi by default assumes that if you do have Photoshop, you're probably going to want to look in the Photoshop folder for the plugins. And so that's what the default path is. In this case, though, we're not going to want to do that. We want to navigate to our own folder. And the other thing too here is that, let's say that you want to add additional, plugins to Photoshop. You can put them in this plugins folder, and the reason why I am going to show you the method where we look at our own folder is so that you don't have to have that installed. So I'm going to paste this in. Basically, you're just going to hit browse. And depending on what version of Flexi you have, if you're running an older version of like 19 or 12 or something like that, you're going to need to go to your C drive, this PC, then you're going to go to C drive. And if you're running an older version of Flexi, like I said, Flexi 19 or Flexi 12, you're going to go to let me scroll down here. It's the SAi or Program Files x86 folder. That's going to be your 32-bit folder for programs. In this case, we're running Flexi 21, which is 64-bit. So I'm just going to go to the program files folder. This is where all your 64-bit applications are held in Windows 10 and Windows 11 because they're based off of 64-bit architecture. So then you're going to scroll down to the SAi folder. Now, ignore the fact that I've got a million different builds here. I have a lot of different installs, so I can have every version of Flexi installed on my computer. So I've got a lot of these folders. Typically, you're only going to see one. So whatever version of Flexi that you have, you're just going to see one folder here. So I choose that folder. In this case, it's this one right here. And then I choose my Adobe plugins folder. I just click on that, hit OK, and it's going to load that file path in for me. Now, do be aware that you may have multiple installs. Let's say that you upgraded from an older version and came to a newer version and you didn't uninstall the old version. You might have two there. So just make sure that you're going to the right one based on which one you have. Also, just kind of another caveat here, just something to kind of keep an eye out for if you're installing these. If you don't have an Adobe plugins folder, it's not the end of the world. You can actually just create a folder and call it Adobe plugins. You can actually call it whatever you want because you're going to be choosing the destination. So if by chance you don't have an Adobe plugins folder, which shouldn't be the case, but just in case you run into that scenario, you can create a folder called Adobe plugins or name it whatever you want and then just choose it from right here. And really, that's as simple as it gets when installing them right here within software. You hit OK, and it's going to load those in. Now, the only caveat here is that you're going to need to restart the software. Now, since I already had it set up, they're already here for me to use. So you can see here that Exposure Software is the company that makes eye candy. So I've got eye candy here. And then this other company called Flaming Pear, they make several. And I've got Flood 2, India Ink, and Super Blade Pro. So these are just some random ones that I picked and kind of downloaded into the software. But here's what I'm going to do is I actually have one more that we're going to install here together so you can kind of just see what I'm doing. So I'm going to minimize Flexi just for a second. And I have all my folders here. And these are just ones, like I said, I went online and I just Google searched free Adobe plugins so that I could just grab something for us to look at. Now, these are probably not the best. Free is probably not always the highest quality, but it kind of gives us a good idea of, the process that we need to use and things like that. Actually, these, these folders are empty because I copied the stuff out of them. So let me grab the zip files here. And we'll let me pull them out. And I can't seem to find them. Okay, doesn't matter. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to open up that folder. So we're going to go into my C drive here. I kind of want to show you what's going to happen when you get them, because it'll be kind of important in terms of how to set them up. So you're, let's go back into SAi, 3614. Okay, Adobe plugins. Okay, now when I downloaded these, they came in a zip file, and they had several different, how do you want to say them? They had different folders inside of them. And so that was one of the things that I had to kind of make sure of and that I was aware of, and that when I unzip them, we don't copy, or we copy the correct folder into them. So I'm going to open up I really want to find those. So let me just see if I've got my downloads folder here. And here we go, shown folder. All right, here's the one that that's the one I want to use. So let's move here. All right, so I've got my Flexi folder. I've got the Adobe plugins folder open, and I've got a little plugins. I'm going to go ahead and extract it. You can just use the Windows extract tools. That's fine. And now it opens up with this little folder right here. So the important thing is on the desktop, you see a folder called Flexify Win Latest, and then the Flexify 2 folder. If you open up the Flexify 2 folder, you'll see that now this is the folder that has all the stuff in it. You do not want to copy this folder here. So let me drag this up here. This is the folder that got unzipped. If I dump this into here, it's 1-2 folder deep. So, because when I double click on this, this is the folder that shows up. The software is going to look for 1 folder deep. So it's going to look at the main folder, and then inside of that folder, it's going to look for the plugins. Now, these are plugins that don't have an installer. This is why this is important. Some of them, like iCandy, yeah, you don't have to worry about it. You just double click the exe, tell it where to install it, and it does everything for you. And there are quite a few paid ones that you can get that kind of operate in the same way. These were free ones, so they don't have an installer. They're just the raw plugins. So I open up the folder that I unzipped. I'm just going to right click on the Flexify 2 folder. I'm going to copy. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this window, and then I'm just going to paste it in here. And you'll notice that when I open Alien Scan, iCandy stuff is in there, the Flexify 2 folder, and we've got Flood 2, the plugins are there. So this is kind of the setup that we want to have. So I'm going to go ahead and close this, because now that I've installed it, I need to restart Flexi. So I'm going to close Flexi, and we're going to restart it, because it loads all these plugins at the very beginning. All right, here we are. And let's pull in a bitmap here. Our desktop, and all right, so this is just a little image here of a fender of a motorcycle. And so let's just pull up our bitmap filter. And now when we go to Adobe Filters, if we have a bitmap selected, which I didn't have, now our filters should activate. Now, this iCandy is kind of an expensive one, so I don't have access to it. But when you click on it, it's going to try and pull up the little application that gets used for iCandy. But we're going to test out the Flaming Pear one here, and let's just try the India ink. So here it brings up a little application, or basically a little window that now you can modify this particular thing here, and they've got all kinds of different settings in here that you can mess with. So you've got all sorts of different things in here, and I don't know the specifics of each one here, but I can kind of play around with these, and they do different things. And so each plugin is going to have their own kind of settings and things that you can adjust. In this case, you can change the granularity, whatnot, and then once you're done, you just hit OK. Flexi is going to process the image, and there you've got your image processed. So you've got kind of a neat 3D effect for this one. So let's go back, and let's just kind of look at the other ones. Let's import another file here of the mountains that I had. Here we go. Okay, so here's one that's kind of interesting. So if we go to bitmap, filters, flood 2, what this does, it basically puts in a water texture in here. And I don't know what it was set to before, but now I can, for example, I can choose to adjust the horizon up or down. So I can kind of create kind of like a lake effect, kind of like that there. That looks kind of cool. And then it reflects everything that's above it. So I can get kind of like a neat mirror, and I can kind of change the size of the ripples and do that here. I can also change the altitude of which your camera is above the perspective of the water, different things like that. I can change some offsets. I can increase the complexity of the water, so kind of adds more ripples, or I can make it more simple. It's a lot smoother, glassier water. So all kinds of different effects here, and this one has some buttons on here where you can kind of do some different things. So this is kind of a neat little plugin. Hit OK. It's going to process that, and there you have kind of a neat little water effect over the bottom of this image. So again, there's plugins that can do a million different things. I've seen plugins that help saturation. There's plugins that will help with like creating different haze effects. I've even seen some underwater effects to kind of give your subject an underwater look. I mean, there's a lot of them out there, and they all do different kinds of things. Here's another one. This one is kind of interesting. I'm just going to grab a shape here, and let's just convert this to a bitmap. So I'm going to rasterize this. We'll go under DPI. That's fine. And I'm going to go to, I think it is Super Blade Pro. This one kind of has like an embossing kind of effect to it. So you can kind of create some, some embossed kind of looks here. You can change the effect as however you want. You can go simple. So you can create just an effect like that. So you've got all sorts of different things in here. Here's another one. So you've got all kinds of effects. You can adjust glare. I mean, there's just all sorts of different things that you can do. And this one is kind of crazy because it has a ton of settings. You can also adjust textures if you want in here, or add your own PNG file for your own special textures. So a lot of different ways to play with this one. And then when you click OK, it applies those settings, and sometimes it takes a minute for it to process. There we go. And so now you've got an embossed style thing here. So this is kind of an interesting one. There is another one. Let's go to Flexify 2. This one is a little odd. So this one distorts your image. So you can create distortions in different ways, which, again, I'm not really sure what the crazy purpose for this one is, but I thought it was kind of interesting. You can create some unique things in here, but the idea is that there's plugins out there on the market that you can purchase on their own separately from Adobe altogether. I downloaded all these off of a website for free, and I don't have Adobe installed, so I can do that. If you want to have the Adobe Photoshop, or you have Adobe Photoshop and you want to add those filters right into Flexi, so you can kind of eliminate Photoshop as the workflow, for some of your workflow. Obviously, it's not going to completely replace it, but if you wanted to do some of this stuff inside of Flexi without having to save your file, move it over, then this kind of gives you that flexibility to do that. And again, the installation process, can be fairly simple. Sometimes it can be a little more complicated. You just have to make sure and grab the right folders and put them in the correct locations. The only thing that and I'll kind of say this as a last mention here. One thing you do want to keep an eye out for is check for 64-bit versions. If you're running Flexi 19, that's going to be 32-bit. If you're running Flexi 21, it's 64-bit. So just kind of be aware of that when you do that. Some of these may not be compatible with a 64-bit architecture. So perfect example, I'm going to actually launch the installer for iCandy 7. So you guys can kind of see what that looks like. I downloaded their trial, and unfortunately my trial is over, so I can't really show it a whole lot. But if we hit next, by default, it's always going to install the 32-bit version of the application. I don't know why it's defaulted to 32-bit, but if I click on custom plugin location, now I have a little checkbox to install the 64-bit plugins. And then I can actually just hit browse and navigate to the folder I want to install them into. So if I'm installing them into Photoshop, I'd go to Photoshop folder. If I'm installing into Flexi, I would just go into the Adobe plugins folder inside of your install on the C drive. You hit next, and it runs through the installation, and it puts everything where you need it to be, and everything's set. So you'll run into these. Just make sure that, especially with the iCandy, if you install the 32-bit version, it probably won't work, or it won't show up in this list. So just something to be aware of there. So again, these are just kind of a few that I found on the internet that were free. Again, I would, for the masses of amounts out there, you can find them just by Google searching them. So you can find free ones. I would imagine that the ones that you pay for are probably a little bit nicer. They probably have a little bit better support for them, a little better features, but there are filters for just about anything. So are there any questions on how to install filters inside of Flexi, or how to get those running if you have those?
One question while you were presenting, Grant, is just asking if this will work on Flexi Design for Mac.
You know what? That is a really good question. Let me pull that up here. We have it inside the preferences, so I would assume so, yes. You'd probably need to download the Mac versions. So the website that I got mine from, I would assume it does, but I don't see anything under the Bitmap menu in the Mac OS application. So I will have to double check on that. I would assume yes, but I don't see under the Bitmap menu, I don't see Adobe filters. So I'll need to double check to make sure that that's the case. It may not work yet. I'll have to see. But you will have to download specific Mac ones if it does work. And the website that I went to did have Mac specific install. So you could download one for Mac or one for PC. Not all the websites are like that, I've noticed. And they're not cross-compatible. I'm almost fairly certain they're not cross-compatible. So let me follow up on that one, and we'll find out, because I'm not entirely sure. And maybe we can post it in the comments of the video or something in the webinar. But I'll find out for sure if we support it in the Mac version, and if not, if that's something we're looking into or not, because I don't see it there. So it could just be a bug, though, that it's not showing up in the menu and it's supposed to be.
All right. Are there any other questions for Aaron about bitmaps? Could be about any other Flexi topic as well.
Oh, Peter mentions that folder directory thing. Yeah, that folder directory thing is really important. You don't want to double down on the folders too deep, because sometimes what will happen is if it's 2 folders or 3 folders deep, which and this is kind of honestly, it depends on how the person zipped up the files before they uploaded them to their website. But if they, in this particular case, they kind of added an extra folder that was kind of unnecessary. And so you have to open that folder and then copy this out of that folder to move it in. And then you just delete this folder here, this initial folder. So that can kind of trip up anybody. So it's kind of one of those things that if you're downloading those from a website, something you just kind of need to keep an eye out for. Also, another kind of thing to kind of keep note of is that you don't want to just throw them in here loose leaf. So if let's open that back up here and go in here. So another example would be, I don't want to just grab all of these and then dump them in the folder like this. So if you have a bunch of plugins that do this, where they're just piled in here, that probably won't work either. So if they're in there like this, where all the plugins are just kind of sitting in there like that, they probably won't work either. So they have to be inside of a folder so that they're kind of contained, so that the software kind of knows what's what. That way it says, okay, this one's from India Ink, this one's from Flood 2, this one's from Alien Skin. Now I know which ones go where, and then it opens all the resources up at the same time. Otherwise, it tries to open everything and it doesn't know what to do with it.
Romulus was asking what the names of the effects were, the other ones other than eye candy. I think you just answered it, but I'm sure there are many other options out there as well.
Eye candy and Alien Skin. I don't know if Alien Skin is still around. I Googled Alien Skin and it took me to the eye candy website. So Alien Skin and eye candy may be one and the same now. They used to be separate plugins. But maybe I didn't do a good enough Google search. I don't know. But those are the two typical big ones that we always found, but they may be merged together now, or Alien Skin may not be available anymore and they just merged it into eye candy. That's the biggest one. That's the one that when you talk about Adobe filters, that's like the one that everybody talks about. They're like, oh yeah, Alien Skin, eye candy. Those are the ones. Those are like the biggest, well-known ones that you can purchase. They are expensive though, but they work really, really well. I mean, you get what you pay for. But I found while doing my search yesterday, I found some for, between $15 and $50 that seemed pretty good, that did several different things. So I think you can get some good quality ones that are not exactly Alien Skin if that's kind of too high in the price point. But the free ones are probably going to be a little more buggy, but kind of try them out. It doesn't hurt to download some and try them. That's what I did. I downloaded like 8 or 9 of them and kind of picked out the ones that I liked and kind of picked out the ones that I thought were kind of dumb. But
all right, I'm not seeing any other questions in the comments here. I'll just let you guys know, though, if you do come up with any other questions, you can always post them in the comments of the YouTube video, webinar recording. That'll be up there, and we'll try to get them answered there. But if there's not any more questions for today, we'll go ahead and close it out. Thank you all for joining us for this Flexi webinar. Our next Flexi webinar will be about creating gradients in Flexi 21, and that'll be on May 17th, and we hope to see you there. We'll have the link to sign up for that in the email with the webinar recording that you'll receive later today. Make sure you're subscribed to our newsletter so you won't miss out on any webinars or other announcements. You can sign up for that on our website. Thank you again for attending. We hope you learned something, and we'll see you next time.